if there was less incest, it would be a pretty decent read. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Retellings. We all love them. We seem to be seeing a lot of them popping up lately. I myself am a very big Greek mythology retelling enthusiast. If you have spent any time on my social media, you will know that. But you know what? I don't discriminate. I like to branch out sometimes. I enjoy a number of different retellings of different stories. And I figured, you know what, I dedicate an entire video every single year to mythology books and retellings. Why not dedicate a video to retellings of another kind? So I sifted through my TBR pile and I came up with a few books. What we are going to be doing in this video is read a few Shakespeare retellings that have been released in the last few years. This is pretty exciting. I do enjoy a bit of Shakespeare. I'm a theatre kid, so obviously. So these are the books we are going to be dealing with in this video. We have Romeo and Juliet, we have Macbeth, we have the Henriade, and we have King Lear. These are mostly plays that I'm vaguely familiar with. Some of them I am more familiar with than others, obviously. So this will be a fun experiment, I guess, to see whether my enjoyment of the book is contingent on how well I know the play, I guess. So without further ado, let's get started. And we are going to be starting off with familiar territory for me. We're going to start with the retelling of the play that I know the most about because I literally studied it at school, and that is Romeo and Juliet. This is Fair Rosaline by Natasha Solomons, and if you could not tell this was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, it literally says that on the front cover. It says the unmissable Romeo and Juliet retelling. So that is what we're going to do. I studied Romeo and Juliet for my GCSE English. I got an A star, so I must have known it pretty well. That said, my first introduction to the play was actually through the film Romeo and Juliet, which is an absolutely iconic film that I love so much. But it did mean that I was a little bit confused when I read the play, the original play, for the first time, and I found out that Paris died. Paris doesn't die in Romeo and Juliet. He gets it on with the nurse and he sings Elton John songs to her and stuff. So yeah, that confused me a little bit. But you know what? The play is an absolute classic. It's one that pretty much everyone is vaguely familiar with, if only because of the premise of like two young star-crossed lovers fall in love and then die at the end. But I'm very interested to read this one. It's a slightly different take, centered around Rosaline, who is like the original girl that Romeo is in love with at the very start of the play before he even sees Juliet. Yeah, I'm gonna dive right into this one, and I guess I will see you when I have finished. Hello! It's been a while. It's been a few days. A little bit longer than I thought, but I finally finished Fair Rosaline by Natasha Solomons. I don't know why it took me so long to finish this book, but yeah. This is a retelling of the play Romeo and Juliet, told from a perspective of Rosaline, who is kind of the original girl that Romeo is in love with at the start of the play. In this book, Rosaline is pretty headstrong, quite stubborn. She wants a lot of freedom, but she is being threatened with being sent off to a nunnery against her will in this book, and that kind of forces her to want to do things for herself in the short time that she has before she gets sent off. And yeah, the plots from there. She meets Romeo. He seems pretty charming. Things seem pretty good at first, although they have to be kind of secretive about meeting up with each other. But then she begins to realize that things are not completely what they seem, and Romeo's motivations might be a little bit more sinister than she thought they were.
I think most of the time, people reading the play, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the romance of it all, and kind of romanticize the idea of these like star-crossed young lovers being so enamored by each other that they will literally end their lives rather than live without each other. And it seems romantic and everything, but also like if you look closer at the play, if you think a little bit more about it, you start to realize, oh my god, this is actually really messed up. I mean, Juliet is 13 years old in the play. She is 13. She has never experienced romantic love before. And also, we get no indication of how old Romeo is in the play. Um, he could very easily be quite a bit older. And in this book, his age isn't explicitly specified, but he is at least 25 years old. Just just think about that for a second. So yeah, the romance in this book is actually a lot more sinister. It's not a romance at all. It is a fully grown adult man grooming young impressionable girls and then using them until he gets tired of them. And there's a whole kind of conspiracy that Rosaline uncovers that casts a lot more kind of familiar characters from the play in a rather sinister light. Like I was reading this and gradually being more and more like, that's suspicious. That's weird. Until it goes from being like, okay, Romeo is kind of a walking red flag. It's slightly concerning until being like, this is fucked up and like this is a genuinely dangerous human being. I thought, yeah, it was really interesting taking a story that is often used as like the blueprint of romance. You get like it's always used as a comparison of like like perfect people who are perfect for each other being compared to Romeo and Juliet. But it's very much not like that. And this book completely turns that on its head and it makes it into a much more sinister and scary story that still seems very realistic. I did really enjoy that aspect of it. I liked just the general characterization. Um, Romeo does make a very interesting villain. Um, he is very well written, but also just a disgusting man. It makes me squirm a little bit. I did really like Rosaline as a protagonist as well. Like she, like all of these decisions are being made for her, and she doesn't really get a choice or a say in what happens to her and what kind of trajectory her life is going in. But she is still determined to make some choices for herself. Um, most of the time to help other people, which I think is really nice. She's very selfless and very determined. And I like the world building of Verona as well. Um, the author's note at the end of the book, and I loved the author's note going more into like the author's thought process in creating this book and examining the play in this very different light to how we normally read it. Um, she mentions that Shakespeare never actually visited Italy, probably, and yet he was so fascinated by it that he kept writing all of these plays that are set in Italy, and yet he still wanted those locations to be vaguely recognizable to his audience of mostly working class Brits. So his settings are meant to be places in Italy, but they actually very much resemble towns and cities in Renaissance era England. Um, and yeah, this kind of version of Verona is quite similar to that. I liked how vibrant the city was. So yeah, overall, I did enjoy this. I would say I enjoyed the second half a lot more than the first. The second half is where we actually start to get into the plot of the play itself. The first half is kind of a bit of like a prequel at the time before the play starts, and then the second half is like the 4 days or something that the play is actually happening. And I felt the pace really picking up then because a lot happens over the span of just a few days. So yeah, it does have a slow start, but I definitely felt like it was worth it. And yeah, there was just a lot to like. So would definitely recommend. Um, I would suggest checking content warnings beforehand. But yeah, I thought this was a very interesting and original retelling of a story that everyone knows. So I'm going to move straight on to my next book, and I have decided to go with something completely different. So this is Henry Henry by Alan Bratton, which is a queer modern day reimagining of the Henriad, which is the series of historical plays. I think like Henry the Fourth parts 1 and 2 plus Henry the Fifth. I don't know. There were a lot of Henrys, and I know nothing about that. I have not read very many of Shakespeare's history plays. I think maybe the only one I have read is Julius Caesar. And also I don't really know much about this era of British history, so it's going to be brand new to me. It is modern day, as opposed to Fair Rosaline being very much historical and kind of canon era. So that's a difference as well. And yeah, I have heard good things about this, so I am very excited to start reading it, and I will let you know what I think. Hello, it's been a few days. I read another book, so let's talk about it. I finished Henry Henry last night. I have several thoughts. This is a literary fiction book um, that is a modern day queer retelling of the Henriad um, by William Shakespeare. And yeah, I knew absolutely nothing about the source material. Um, and I'm still kind of, I still feel like I know absolutely nothing about the source material because genuinely no idea how much of this was like accurate to the source material, how much of it was made up. I'm hoping like quite a lot of it was made up, I think. Anyway, so our main character in this book is Hal, who is the eldest son of the Duke of Lancaster and the heir to the House of Lancaster. He's a bit of a reluctant heir, though. He, has a lot of expectations put on him, and he doesn't really live up to those expectations, especially put on him by his father, who is like overbearing and very, very traditional. Like, he wants Hal to be a good Catholic boy and be super like virtuous and everything and be at his beck and call all the time. But I was like, screw that. He's just graduated university. It's a bit of a disaster. He's gay. He spends most of his money on alcohol and drugs. Um, yeah, he's a little bit of a posh twat, really, but he's slightly endearing as well. So yeah, he's an endearing posh twat. And this book is mostly about their relationship. It's very dysfunctional family vibes. He has like 4 other siblings. Honestly, it's difficult to keep track. And they are a very dysfunctional family. Um, and yeah, overall, this was not what I was expecting from reading the blurb. Um, the blurb of the book, the summary, what I kind of was expecting was like it focused a lot more on kind of this little romance that is struck up between Hal and his kind of rival slash frenemy Harry Percy. And I was kind of expecting a little bit more focus on that and have it be kind of a whimsical romance. But it doesn't really focus on them. It focuses more on the relationship between Hal and his father, and that is a lot less whimsical. There is no whimsy in this book. It is all family trauma. So, yeah, I wish I had kind of known about that before I had gone into it because I was kind of taken aback. Um, Again, this is your sign to read the trigger warnings before reading a book, any book, even if you think it's going to be a safe book, still read the trigger warnings. I do not heed my own advice, clearly. So, yeah, big old content warnings, particularly for just general homophobia and religious trauma, and also for CSA by a parent. It's rough. Like, it is uncomfortable to read, and that doesn't necessarily denote a bad book, but like, I feel like the rewards weren't necessarily worth the uncomfortableness I felt while reading it. Like, it is well written. There are some nice passages in there. But yeah, it did feel very uncomfortable, parts of it. And yes, Hal is vaguely endearing as a protagonist, but he's not so endearing that I was like automatically rooting for him. It was more that like I preferred him to the other characters who are just even worse than he is. So yeah, I can't really speak to like how accurate it is as a retelling, really, because I haven't read the Henriade. Honestly, I would love to now. I'd love to look more into it just to know how much of it came from the source material, how much of it was made up by the author. Because I'm assuming the author took quite a few creative liberties with it. Because if he didn't, then that's kind of messed up. But yeah, overall, it's not actually a bad book. I think if there was less incest, it would be a pretty decent read. But it was just very uncomfy. Um, and part of that is just on me for not checking trigger warnings, and expecting something different of the book. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I am still glad I read it though. The concept was really intriguing, and it does give a decent insight into the the lives of these very kind of upper class, powerful people in Britain who come from like a very long line of tradition. Because like that is a lot to live up to when you are 22, 23 years old and gay and you just want to lounge around and take drugs all the time. Like, no shame in that. Like, that burnout has to be rough. But I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it to another person, really. I think if I did recommend it to another person, I would be judged harshly. So, yeah, that is Henry. I think rating wise, probably 3.25 stars. Like, it is well written, the prose is nice. Um, but yeah, not quite what I was expecting, but that's okay. We're here to learn. It's a process. We are doing this for the plot. So that is two books down, two to go. We're halfway through this challenge. So I'm gonna move right on to my next book, which is Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This one obviously is a retelling of Macbeth. And I do know a little bit more about this play than I do about the Henriade, thankfully. So I should hopefully have a fairly decent idea of what happens in the play, and a bit more understanding of what is going on in the book. And yeah, I have read one Avery book before. I read A Study in Drowning, which I enjoyed. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I've heard mixed things about this, so I'm quite curious to see what I think about it. And yeah, I'm gonna get started, and I will see you at some point for an update. Well, I have some thoughts. So last night I finished Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This is a reimagining of Macbeth, from the perspective of Lady Macbeth. It's fairly self-explanatory. Firstly, I read this in a single weekend, and I was out of the house for most of Sunday. I didn't have my book on me, so I finished this in like maybe two or three sittings, which doesn't happen very often for historical fiction. Like this is canon era, it's historical Scotland, um, and normally I find historical fiction quite difficult to get into, but I don't know. I found this a pretty easy read, and I think that is down to the writing style. the actual like quality of the prose. I love Avery's writing style. I just think it's so beautiful. Every single sentence is so well crafted. It just like it flows. It's so atmospheric. It makes for very easy reading. So yeah, that's what I liked about it. I liked the writing style. I liked the quality of the prose. The content, on the other hand, I have pretty mixed feelings about, in particular, the portrayal of Lady Macbeth in this book. Ava Reed seeks to present her as a good person who has done nothing wrong in her life ever. And that's pretty different to how we normally see Lady Macbeth portrayed. Like, she is a pretty iconic villainess in Shakespeare. And, like, I get where she's coming from. Like, she's a powerful woman. She knows what she wants. She kind of does what she wants to get that. And, like, in that day and age, to men, that was probably seen as quite a threat. So it does make sense that, like, she is portrayed as a villain. But I do think that this book goes a little bit too far in trying to absolve her of her crimes. She is turned into very much a teenage victim. Like, she's 17 years old. She is kind of at the whims of first her father and then her husband. She doesn't have pretty much any control over her life or anything she does. She does have magic of some kind, but it's very rare that she gets to use that magic. And yeah, it just felt like every single trait of Lady Macbeth that makes her a flawed and interesting character was just kind of stripped from her and tacked onto another character, like usually a male character, always a male character actually. There are like three, two other female characters in this book. One of them dies like 20 pages in. The other one doesn't come in for another 100 pages. So, yeah, this book doesn't pass the Bechdel test. And what was left after she had every single character trait stripped from her was a bit of a bland protagonist. Now, look, I want to stress that there is nothing wrong with having a main character who isn't physically strong, isn't especially ruthless, who, is soft and, isn't particularly for conflict or violence or anything. But you kind of need to have something to replace that. Honestly, I kind of got the impression that Lady Macbeth in this book is just Effie from A Study in Drowning in a slightly different font. But even then, I think Effie had a lot more depth to her. Like, I found her a very compelling protagonist because there was a lot more to her. I felt not so much with this one. And I just feel like this reimagining could have been approached in a slightly different way. Like, instead of constantly presenting Lady Macbeth as a victim and as someone who has never done anything wrong, and instead everything that has gone wrong is the fault of all of the men. I do think that her character and like the darker aspects of her character, the all of the flaws and the bad things that she does, that could have all been explored with a lot more nuance to create this protagonist who is flawed and does terrible things, but at the same time, we still root for her. Like, you can have two things at once. You can have this kind of anti hero character who is not the most kind of virtuous or honorable person. Like, they can be flawed and messy and mess up and do terrible things, but like, they can still be endearing and you still want to root for them and hope that they get what they want or at least, survive. So you don't need to have a protagonist who is completely innocent in order for them to be likable. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I hope that kind of made sense. It just like Lady Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's most iconic and interesting female characters. So to have a retelling that strips this character of its most interesting traits is a bit of a choice. There are also a lot of creative liberties taken with the play on top of like the whole Lady Macbeth thing. Like there are dragons for some reason. I mean it's been a long time since I read Macbeth, so I'm a little bit hazy on all of the details, but I'm pretty sure there aren't dragons in the original play. Yeah, there's a character who can like shapeshift into a dragon, but the mechanics of that shapeshifting felt a little bit hazy. Like I didn't really know to what extent they could control that shapeshifting because it kind of seemed at first like they couldn't control it, but then it got to later in the book and suddenly like they were turning into a dragon at will. I don't know. So yeah, that was interesting. I don't know if it was like necessary particularly for the story. Um like if the original play didn't need to have dragons, then why put dragons in? I don't know. That's just a personal preference thing because I don't particularly enjoy books with dragons. If you're a dragons fan, then you might love this. Because there is one dragon that turns up sporadically. I'm gonna stop talking now. I meant to just talk about this for like 5 minutes. But it's been a lot longer than that. So yeah, I'm gonna shut up. So yeah, overall, I think as as a book removed from its context, it was alright. It was fine. Like I read it in a single weekend. I thought it was an easy read. It is beautifully written. Like the prose itself, really well written. As a retelling of Macbeth, not so much. So yeah, that is Lady Macbeth. We only have one book left to read in this video, so I'm gonna crack on. And I haven't had like the most successful vlog so far. Um, Nothing has quite hit that like 4 to 5 star mark. So all of my hopes are hinging on this this final book. I've purposely saved this one to last because I do have the highest expectations for it. So yeah, fingers crossed. I enjoy it. It is Private Rites by Julia Armfield, um, who like I know I am already going to love the writing style alone because I loved Our Wives Under the Sea, and this is like it's kind of a speculative post-apocalyptic retelling, reimagining of King Lear, which again is a play that I don't know much about. Um, so it will be interesting, I guess, to read this. Yeah, I have been putting this book off for a while. It's been on my list of 25 books to read in 2025, and I purposefully put it off to read in September when the weather got a little bit colder and rainier, because that is very much the vibe of this book. I say that, but like the sun is shining and it's very dry outside. So that's interesting. It was raining all weekend, so I don't know what has happened. So um, I will at least be starting this in the sun. But hopefully at some point it will get all nice and atmospheric and I'll be able to have the vibes that I want. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. What am I doing? I'm gonna shut up and start reading now, and I will see you when I am done with this. Hello, it's been a few days and it has not rained once in the time that I have been reading this, which is incredibly sad. I really wanted that atmospheric moment, but I guess it was just not to be. So, this is Private Rites by Julia Armfield. It is a very vague retelling of King Lear. It's more kind of a book that is slightly inspired by the concept of King Lear. It is set at the end of the world. Um, there is a lot of flooding. It's raining all the time. Um, Houses are just kind of collapsing into the sea. Um, Yeah, people are not having a very good time, and it's very kind of it's a slow descent into the end times. There isn't kind of a massive event or anything. It's more just like things are just steadily getting worse, and people are just kind of accepting that or trying to accept it. So you have three sisters in this book. Um, they're all lesbians. They're all kind of disasters. And their father has just died, and their father is this very kind of enigmatic architect who designs like floating buildings and stuff. And he has this big house that is like it's on stilts, so it can like float above the water and everything. And it's like a bit of a weird place. And these sisters have a bit of a complicated relationship with him. He's not the best. He tended to pit them against each other. So you have Isla, who is the older sister, um, and she is a therapist, but it's very clear that she herself needs therapy. Um, and I thought that like older sister complex was done really well. Like she feels like she has had to do everything and basically like parent her younger sisters her whole life, and she is resentful that like she has never been kind of shown gratitude for that. Then you have Irene, who is the second sister. um she's just kind of trying her best, really. She has a partner who is too good for this world. We love Jude. She had like long-term career aspirations in academia, but like it was pretty clear that there wouldn't be much point in that, really, because you know how long is the world going to be around? And then you have Agnes, who is their half sister. She's considerably younger than the other two siblings, and because of that, she is kind of on the outside. Like she doesn't share that bond that Isla and Irene share. Even though Isla and Irene don't particularly like each other that much, like they are still pretty close. Like they know each other very well. Whereas Agnes is very much kind of on the outside. Um, and yeah, she works at a cafe and like she's pretty happy with that and like going clubbing and stuff. Like she doesn't really have any kind of aspirations or anything. And you have their father dying and the will being read and all the fallout from that. And that's kind of where the King Lear references come in. Like you have the three siblings who have a bit of a weird, complicated relationship with each other and with their father. And the third one is kind of on the outside a little bit. And yeah, there are a few kind of odd references to Shakespeare, and a couple of Shakespeare's works in this book. Um, that's kind of where the similarities end, though, because it is a very different concept. I mean, this is set at the end of the world. So I really enjoyed the setting. You kind of have the city where this is set as a perspective in itself. Like you have all three sisters' perspectives, and then you have the city. Um, and the city is kind of a character in that way, and it's characterized by the people who live there and are kind of struggling to survive. It's very kind of snapshot based, like odd glimpses into the lives of other people besides the sisters. I liked the exploration of the relationship between the sisters, like the fact that they know each other because they grew up together, but they also don't really know each other, especially like with Agnes because she is so much younger and she doesn't really have that that bond with them. And as she's become an adult, like she doesn't really speak to them at all, really, up until the death of their father. And it's also an exploration of like how does one's upbringing affect who they are as a person, as a fully grown adult with a personality. Like there's a whole discussion of like, do they really want to keep pitting themselves against each other because that is what they were brought up to do? Do they want to go on disliking each other and not speaking to each other because that is what their father kind of brought them up to do? Do they want their relationship and part of their personality to be based on their father? So yeah, that was really interesting. I would say overall, for the most part, it is a little bit no plot, just vibes. Um, it is kind of in that way extended character studies of each of the three sisters, plus I guess the city as well. Um, it is very character driven. There's a little bit of a mystery, and also like the ending is a bit weird. I don't really know how to feel about it. So the ending, there's like a bit of a reveal. There's a bit of kind of a a shock plot line that just comes in suddenly. There have been like clues and stuff building up to it, kind of peppered throughout the book, but it's like very subtle. And then suddenly in the last 10 pages, there is a reveal and there's like a big climax, and suddenly everything is moving very fast. And I don't really know how to feel about that. I did like the fact that there are clues and stuff, and there are kind of little bits of information that you could pick up on. It does make me kind of want to go back and reread this and see if I can pick up on any more. But yeah, it just like it suddenly moved very, very fast. I would have liked the climax to be a little bit more drawn out. It was just like in the last 10 pages, everything moved so fast, and then suddenly it was over and the book was over. Even like an epilogue or something would have been nice just to like have a bit of a cool down from that, because it was suddenly just like, what is going on? Just whiplash. So yeah, that was something I wasn't a massive fan of. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna try not to let that ending ruin my experience, because overall, like, I loved the aesthetics of this. I loved the setting and how kind of dreary and like disastrous everything is, but it was like a very kind of quiet disaster. It's not like a blockbuster film scenario. Very kind of desolate and yeah, just a bit depressing, really. And it does make you think, because like I don't know, obviously when things aren't that bad for us in reality, like, you know, it's not raining all the time, as evidenced by the fact that it is sunny right now, and it didn't rain at all while I was reading this. All the rain must have migrated into this book. Um, but you know, it does feel like we are kind of headed that way, like in terms of climate change and in terms of the political situation we're in right now. Like, it does feel like we are slowly heading towards something big and not great. And it does make you think, like, what would you do in this situation? Like, would you just accept it? Would you fight against it? Like, what can you do really when you're faced with the end of the world? Like, other than just watch and try to live your life as normally as possible. It really kind of speaks to the human condition, like how all of these people are just trying to go about their daily lives as much as they can, like go to work, get a coffee, all of that stuff, you know, despite not really knowing if there's much point in doing that. So yeah, overall, 10 out of 10 concept. Really enjoyed that. Um, execution, especially towards the end, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but like I would still recommend it. Um, it's just like a bit of a weird book, which I enjoy. So yeah, rating wise, I would say probably 4.5 stars, maybe like lower end of 4.5. Um, but no, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Definitely my favorite book I have read in this video, which is good. We have ended on a high. So that's it. That is the fourth and final book of this vlog. Um, yeah, overall, not the most successful experience, but like it was still an experience. We found a book that is 4.5 stars, and that is towards the top end of my ratings. So yeah, that's fine. I would be very interested to go back and read the plays that I don't know so well, um, just to see what kind of references and stuff I might have missed through kind of not being as familiar with the plays. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this experience. I do like a retelling. I like a book that is in conversation with a past piece of literature. Um, I especially like when people do kind of new original things with that piece of literature, setting them in a different time or a different place, telling them from a different perspective, twisting the narrative a little bit. Yeah, all of that is fun. So, yeah, if you have any more recommendations for retellings of Shakespeare plays, please let me know. Put them in the comments. I love to get book recs and stuff. And yeah, I would love to read more in this kind of subgenre, I guess. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. You can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, Storygraph, Blue Sky. Um, my username on all of those platforms is at Widliv Jones for even more content at an even more regular upload schedule than this. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.